A very warm welcome. My name is John. I am the founder of TTK Life Strategies. And today I really feel honored to be chatting to Jason Down. Jason and I met in 2012 at a business breakfast, like a social function kind of thing. And from my side, the first time I met Jason, I just sensed there was something in him that I related to. I couldn't quite put my finger on it initially, but after a few meetings, we started to connect and we started to chat, and I saw that we actually had very similar ideas about certain things. We both work in the field of addiction recovery, and we share similar passions and ideas in that. And apart from that, what I know about Jason has been a lot about integrity and honesty and openness, vulnerability, which is not very common with people today, which I've really appreciated. And I know that he's got an inspirational story to share with us. So without further ado, Jason, tell us your story.
What an honor and a privilege it is to be with you and for this mission that you're on, and I really am very grateful for this opportunity. So meeting you for the first time, it was actually quite a wonderful experience. It is an honor and a privilege to still have this friendship and this relationship continue for so many years. Okay, well, I'm Jason. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic, addict, gambler, sex addict, and anything that I could possibly use to numb my emotional pain and my issues with self-esteem, I'd probably get a hold of it. One of the things I'd like to reiterate with my story is that it's very similar to a lot of people. I had what they say is a high rock bottom, where I didn't have to lose everything, but what I did lose meant the most to me. One of those things was my wife and my daughter. It was their act of courage to let me go and to leave me in my state of dysfunction and disease of addiction, that it got me to realize that I was the problem, and I could not blame anyone or anything else. That I could never fit in, I could never be a part of. I never felt good enough. That was my biggest issue. I never felt I was ever going to be good enough. This could have been a lot of the contributing factors could be from my mom that lived with a lot of fear, and with fear comes control. Shame. My mom's history comes from abusive family as well. Alcohol was always the instigator, always has been, always will be. I have an affinity against alcohol if it enters into my body, because I know what it does to me, and I'll share a little bit of that later on. However, I was brought up in where whenever alcohol was used, it became very aggressive household. I got to witness a lot of violence. I got to witness a lot of abuse. And so for me, it put me in a very fearful state from an early childhood. Now, I can't say that I can blame that for my behaviors to continue further on in life, but it certainly put me in a belief state that I always had to defend myself. And one of the behaviors that I learned very young was how to lie, how to manipulate, how to lie, how to hide things. And so for me, that was a very toxic coping mechanism that I learned very young. My first drinking experience was when I was 12. I was at a friend's house, and it was in a matter of 6 drinks. I passed out, I blacked out, got sick, and passed out all in one evening. And I thought it was great, because when I woke up the next day, I didn't know what a hangover was. And nobody knew, or the parents didn't know, so I got away with it. And so that, I think, created the love affair with the process of addiction, the sneaking, the hiding, the clandestine behavior. Let's put it that way. And so that started my love affair. So when at the age of 15, growing up in high school, now I went to a high school in South Africa where that's when I was bullied. That's where a lot of people can relate to the bullying story. I didn't have an identity, and the identity that I believed I had, I hated. I didn't like what I was seeing within myself, because a lot of people would degrade, abuse, verbally, physically, emotionally abuse me. And so for me, I had to run away from the identity that I was becoming. So I didn't want to be myself. So I had to be somebody else, because I wasn't accepting of myself. I couldn't accept myself. It was too painful, right? Um, One of the things that I battled with is control from other people. That's why I didn't like authorities. I didn't like authoritarian situations. I didn't like being controlled, because that's what I knew from my family, from my childhood, and that created pain. So anytime that somebody told me, Jason, you will do this, I would do the opposite, just to prove them. Now, those rules and regulations growing up in high school should have been the fundamental tools that I learned today on how to manage my life. I'd get up in the morning, make my bed, make some breakfast. It's self-care. Those boundaries were self-care. And unfortunately, because I did not see it that way, I had to go against it, to the point where I only learned how to take care of myself 26, 27, even into my early 30s. Now, moving forward, I met, so high school left. I got expelled because of all the rule breaking that I was going through. Fortunately, I let go of this facade of trying to be anybody else when I got into a new high school for the last 2 years of my life. And for me, that was a big breaking point. That was a breakthrough for me. I'm going to allow myself to just be. And it turns out I could be quite weird, which is fine. I got to accept myself those final years of high school. I met Anna, who is unfortunately my ex-wife, but we'll get to that story. I met Anna when I was about 20, and we had a wonderful love affair in the early years. However, I had introduced her from high school. I started experimenting with marijuana. Then from the age of 18, moved into obviously the party drugs and all those things. I don't need to go into the substances, but it progressed as nature would. It progressed through those chemicals as well. And by the time I hit 20, I was into the harder powders. And it was there that I met Anna, introduced her to the lifestyle. Fortunately, she's not the addict. I am. However, my conditioning, my behaviors had conditioned her in such a way that I could manipulate and get what I want. Fortunately, Anna had very strong boundaries towards as soon as our daughter was born, when I was 23. And so when Ina was born, I couldn't stop. In fact, the fears in me to become a father was so strong. I had no coping mechanisms. I had no stable income. I was still studying at the time. I was living under the roof of I was living under the financial roof of my family, of my parents. And for me, that again was always affecting my self-esteem. So from there, when Ina was about a year old, my drug abuse took a step back, because it was becoming a massive problem within the family. Now my folks were aware of my drug use. Now I had to move back to alcohol, right? So I cross addicted way back to alcohol. Now this is where obviously all my emotional bottling over the years of abuse from growing up started to come out in highly abusive ways, especially when I blacked out. I did not know the kind of person I became when I blacked out, because all that pain, anger, frustration, resentment all came out in those situations. So fortunately, there was a day where Anna said enough is enough. Her life was in danger because of my alcohol abuse. So she packed her bags, and I took her and Ina to the airport, where she flew back home to Europe. Now, for me, that was the day where my addict in my head said, freedom. This is all you've ever wanted, is the freedom to do what you want, no limits. It became a very, very lonely place, And that loneliness was my first rock bottom. It was my desperation. It was a time where I picked up the phone, and that was the first time I phoned AA and said, guys, I don't know what to do. I need help. And I went to my first meeting. That for me was because I ran on such high levels of fear and anxiety, it wasn't enough for me to get the help. I needed more help. So I phoned the folks, and the next day I got into a car and I went back home to Botswana. And for about a month, my active addict was still trying to connive, still try and get booze, try and get money, the operating was on another level. And so finally my family said to me, my mom actually sat me down, she says, Jason, you have a serious drinking problem. And I sat with her and I said, Mom, you don't understand. If booze was the problem, I wouldn't be picking it up. I have a problem in me that makes me drink the way I do, and I need it. I need it. Mom, you don't understand. I need it. And this broke her heart. She's never seen anything like this before. And as my mom is a wonderful codependent, she has got the most amazing heart, but unfortunately did not know the tools on how to help me. She just wanted me to stop hurting, as a mother would always want to do, right? So the best thing was they got hold of the family friend who was a psychiatrist, who said that suggested an inpatient treatment for a minimum of 6 months, right? Where they had doctors, they were registered, they had all the right protocols, they also had medical staff on site. So I went to treatment about a week later, and from there, that was 2009, and I was in treatment for 8 months. In primary care and 3 months in a tertiary care in a halfway house. I left there and started training as a counselor. I left there, went back to Botswana, trained as a counselor in a certificate, just a basic certificate. So I don't consider myself a counselor, but I needed to learn some of the tools to help me help others. Now, one of the things that I want to speak on specifically is relapse. Because for me, I hear stories that relapse is a part of the process, the recovery process. It's a learning curve. Never beat yourself up. However, I never, ever wanted to relapse, because I wanted to prove to myself, after all the hard work I went through, after all the pain that I caused my family, I needed to come to a place where this needed to be my life. Now, it does take a community. It does take a support structure. And I needed to know that I need to put my life and my decision making for a good span of years into somebody else's hands. I needed to surrender that kind of control, because I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to live life on life's terms, right? Yes, I got the healing and the therapy I needed, but now I need to learn to live. Now I need to know that I need to get up and brush my teeth every morning. I need to make my own bed with nobody watching, right? How does that happen? So I started counseling, and then after about 2 years, 3 years after that, I'd say about 2 years, I moved back to Johannesburg, and by the grace of my higher power, I managed to rekindle that relationship with my wife, Anna, and my daughter. So they moved back to Johannesburg with me. Against my wishes, this was in my relapse prevention. Johannesburg was a big trigger for me. And so for me to go back into the old house, old ways, old environment, it was a big risk. However, I didn't speak to my sponsor about it. And I didn't, should I say, I needed to start a new life with a new sponsor, a new set of support. That was hard, but it helped. However, what I came to realize is that Anna never got her therapy. Anna never got her healing. Anna never, my warning signs were her biggest triggers, right? And a warning sign for me is a behavior. It's not getting up early in the morning, consistency or lack of consistency. I wouldn't go as far as saying manipulation, but manipulation would definitely be one of them, right? Lack of boundaries, or even putting in new boundaries was a trigger for her, because this is a new behavior she's not aware of. She doesn't like to be told no. And so this was a struggle for me. Without her understanding the state of addiction, it was very hard to navigate our marriage. With other stresses in place, it got to a point where depression hit me. Our finances went down the drain. Our business fell to pieces, and for me, that was the big drop back into the state of addiction. Pornography started coming into the play. What did I do? I dropped shop and I ran back to what was comfortable. I went back to Botswana under the care of the family, right? Then I could look after myself, put my recovery first. But unfortunately, I moved away from my support. I moved away from my accountability. And what happened? I had the comfort of having food done for me, laundry done for me, my bed made for me, and I fell straight back into addiction. And that's when I relapsed on marijuana, and that was in 2014. So for 2 years, hiding, conniving, manipulating, going back into asking for money for drugs, and going back into it, it was a very toxic place for me. All the while trying to keep the persona that everything is okay, and that was a new level of addiction for me. Now my life isn't falling to pieces. I was a functioning addict. I could smoke, I could work, I could come home, I could maintain relationships to a functioning state, not a healthy state. There is a big difference. I was not functioning healthily. I was not managing healthily, but I was functioning under the pretense that everything was okay when it was not okay. So I had to go back into treatment after I relapsed on one of the harder powders in 2016. In the early years of 2016, I went back into primary care treatment in 2016, and that's where everything came out. That's where infidelity came out. All the hidden stuff came out. I had a family session with Anna, and everything came out. My identity was also based on being a father to her, a father to my daughter, and a husband to her. Even though it was a unhealthy relationship because of my part, I was never ready for that relationship. I did not know how to handle the truth, and being able to allow Anna to live her life separately from mine. I realized what codependency was, and that was a big thing for me. So I have to say, through my journey in recovery, in and outside of treatment, has been a wonderful lesson to be able to share with people what the difficulties are coming out of treatment and what the risks are for relapse. And so now that I left treatment after working for the facility as an inquiries and admissions, after learning more about the disease of addiction and all the other behaviors that go with it. I mean, we're talking about the codependency, how massive that happens, how eating disorders kick in, how body dysmorphia, body image and body shaming, a lot of these other behaviors creep in, and it's got very little to do with substances, to be honest. Substances are the things that most people see, but they don't know what's happening behind closed doors when the fridge is open or when the bathroom door is closed. And that for me is where my heart lies. It's helping those with the behaviors. It's the behind the scene. I love the journey of recovery. I love self-discovery, self-development. It is a passion, it is a desire. And networking with people like yourself, John, is just one of the most amazing things, because it's good to meet people with such empathy, with such a heart for others, and understanding that pain. It's a very rare commodity in these days. I'm grateful to say that I am clean and sober and behavior free 4 years now. All grace to my higher power and the programs at work and the tools at work. shame was a very big thing for me, holding me in the darkness within myself. I was not accepting of the thoughts that I had. I wasn't accepting of the behaviors that I did. I also took on board an identity that came from people saying, Jason, you're fat, Jason, you're stupid, Jason, you're this, you're that. So I internalized that, and I created that image and that belief. And I did not allow myself to accept who I really was. And until I sat down and I was told to write a list of what are my values? What do I value? I value family. I value respect, honesty, integrity. I value the character of honor. I value consistency. Very difficult for me, but I value these things. And I wrote it down, and I said, well, what do I love about myself? What is it about myself that I do love? And that was a very short list in the beginning. The first thing is I love that I have a faith. I love that I am courageous, that for anybody else, if there was somebody in present and at risk, I would be willing. Now I've got to be careful here. I'd be willing to put my life down in that time of danger. In the same fact, I looked at the opposite side, said, well, would I be able to sacrifice my life for myself? That was a difficult question. That has been a time that I had to work on. But yes, I am willing to sacrifice my wants for what I need. And that is to make sure that I am healthy and safe. So how did I learn to accept myself? I learned to accept the fact that I have values that I can work towards, and that I love that I have those values. As soon as I started sharing with another human being my shameful thoughts about myself, about others, about situations that I had put myself into, as soon as I started to shed light onto those shameful things, I learned that they didn't judge me. No longer did I have to judge myself for them, and I could let it go. It happened. Things happen. Situations happen. No longer am I ashamed of it, especially how I thought about my body. Question. One of the things that I came to understand about my purpose is when I started to look at my strengths, understand my weaknesses. So doing a SWOT analysis for me was very helpful. I find that I'm empathetic. I understand. I am very in tune when I communicate with somebody who understands pain, or maybe doesn't understand the pain, but is definitely feeling it. So it's through our struggles and through our testimony and through our life experience that we learn that that's where our purpose is. Whatever we go through, there's always a reason, and there could always be a reason to move forward and to share it with others. Yeah. We have set up an aftercare program for anybody who's gone through treatment. We do specialize in long-term recovery success. That is our hope and our aim, and our purpose is to make sure that you continue your journey into life with the support of counseling, accountability tools, and educational tools, especially for the family. They need to understand what you're going through. And also better to support what you're going through without having to be controlling or to put measures in place that make them feel better, but put you in a state of relapse. So we've got the aftercare program and relapse prevention plan, and that you can find us at the nowwhat.net.